Hey, you guys, welcome back to Rocket City Yardstead. I'm so glad you're here. My name's Sarah. If you're new, welcome. So, I have been working for the last couple of hours on peeling apples and slicing them up to can. And I got down to my last two apples and thought I should be filming this. So, if you have never canned apples, welcome. I went to my local orchard and bought a half bushel of apples the other day. If you've been around for a while, you know I have a couple of apple trees in my garden. They featured in some early garden tour like videos, but we just had major pest issues this year. The leaf-footed bugs just destroyed my entire apple crop. And so I went to the local orchard and got some of my favorite apples. It's a bummer to need to do that, but I'm grateful that it's an option. So we are just gonna get these last couple of apples peeled and sliced up, and then we're gonna can them. So apples you can water bath because they are a high acid food, and you can also can them in fruit juice if you want. You can can them in water. Light syrup, I think, is what they recommend. I have apple juice still. I bought more than I needed when I canned my peaches. And so I prefer to use juice because I don't handle cane sugar super well. So that's how I am going to can my apples. But I thought you guys might like to come along for the process. So I'm just cutting these in half, cutting the core out, and then making slices. I do have somewhere, doesn't work very well. It was a fairly cheap one of those spiral slicer peelers, but I find this works better for me. So I just do it with a hand peeler and a knife. I'm going to finish these last two apples up and then we can move on to the canning process. So I've got clean jars in the canner and covered with water, and that's getting heated up. So the next thing I need to do is get my apples into a pot. I'm not sure if they're all going to fit in this one pot, but we'll see. So the recipe calls for hot packing your apples. It says they don't raw pack very well. And that for every 5 pounds of apples, you want to add a pint of whatever your canning liquid is. So your syrup, your juice, you're just canning in water, you want to add a pint of liquid for every 5 pounds. So in my case, we're going to use apple juice. But right now I'm just getting the apples all transferred out of their lemon water into the pot. So once we get it all in this pot, we want to bring it to a boil and let it boil for 5 minutes. And then we can fill our jars with apples. I'm sort of guessing on my juice amount here because I don't know exactly how many pounds actually made it into my pot. Or whatever juice doesn't go in to this first round, we can reuse with the second batch. This doesn't look like a lot of liquid in here. You can see if I pull it to the side where the liquid is. But as the apples come to a boil, they're going to put off a lot of liquid, and that is how we will end up with enough to cover the fruit in the jars. I am trying to stir them around to make sure these upper apples get into the hot liquid as well. We'll come back once it's boiled for the 5 minutes and I'll show you what it looks like. So it has been 5 minutes of boiling, and you can see our apples have shrunk down and they're actually floating a bit now, and there is way more liquid in this pot. I'm sorry the camera's steaming up, you guys. This is right above this hot liquid, so there's lots of steam in the air. But this batch is ready to put in our jars. I don't know about you guys, but I am a little bit weird about my jars. I like to make sure they're facing exactly the direction I want them. On my shelves, I like to have all the jars and the lids lined up facing the same direction on every jar. But I'll just get these loaded up. They smell good. The apples are nice and soft at this point as well. The bubble. Check our level here. Needs a little bit more liquid. Our first round of apples are in the canner. I got it to a rolling boil, and so set the timer for 20 minutes. I'm actually going to get way more apples than I thought I was. The recipe said that with 12 and a quarter pounds of apples, you should get 9 pints. And I got 8 pints in the canner. And then I still have this amount of apples left that need to be canned. Maybe 2 or 3 extra pints there. I don't know. It's a bonus, so I'm really happy about that. So we got 4 more jars. That means we got 3 extra pints than what I was expecting. So that's really nice. Now you can see by my water, I had some siphoning in here. Pull these out and find out just how bad that is. As long as your jars are half full of liquid, they are safely canned. So we'll just see what we're dealing with as we pull each jar out. I don't know. None of them look like they have really low water levels. I got all of my apples canned up, and I ended up actually getting 3 extra pints. So that was very exciting. And they're all really nice, full jars. So I'm thrilled about that. But I still have half a bag of apples left. And these are storage apples. So they'll go in the fridge and we can eat on them fresh for months. But I got to thinking, I did all of this work with the apples. We should actually have something to enjoy now. We're going to make a apple upside down cake. I had to kind of pull from a couple of different places to get what I wanted because I wanted to make an oat flour apple upside down cake, and I did not find a recipe for that. So I will write up what I'm doing here, and you can find the directions in the show notes if you're interested. But the first thing I need to do is I have half a stick of melted butter. I'm going to pour that into my greased pan. I actually put parchment paper down. Some people do that, some people don't. But I thought it might help releasing the cake from the pan and keep our apples looking all beautiful and pretty in there. So half a stick of butter and a quarter cup of coconut sugar. If you use brown sugar will work just fine here. I just use coconut sugar. So we're going to mix that all together in this pan. I am also going to add a little bit of cinnamon to this. And then just get that all mixed up. Get that sugar nice and incorporated into the butter. And this will melt and dissolve and turn into like a caramely topping on our cake when we invert it. So the next thing I need to do is get a towel, and I'm going to dry my apples. I peeled and sliced and cored my apples here. And then I just put them in a little bit of water with lemon juice to keep them from browning. But I want them to be nice and dry when they go into our cake pan, so we're not adding too much extra moisture. So I'm gonna get these dried off. I peeled 2 sort of medium-sized apples. I don't know exactly how many it's gonna take for our cake, but we can just eat apple slices if we have too many. I figured I'd rather have too many than not enough. So completely personal preference here and how you lay your apples out. I want this to be really pretty. So I'm gonna try and make it pretty. I am not the greatest at this. I tend to err on the side of things tasting good over aesthetics in my cooking, but I do want a pretty cake. I have some smaller slices, so hopefully I can fill in places like that. Just try and make it beautiful. Do you guys have favorite desserts this time of year? I tend to be more of an apple girl than a pumpkin girl, but I do enjoy a good pumpkin bread. Never really gotten super into the pumpkin spice craze, but I think that looks nice. And I do have apples left, so we'll just snack on those later. So the next thing we need to do for our cake is I have half a stick of softened butter and half a cup of coconut sugar here. Just like with the topping, brown sugar would work just fine if that's what you use, but we need to get these creamed together. While that's creaming, we're gonna get our dry ingredients and our wet ingredients all mixed together. So, oh, you know what? I'll just use that. I'm really bad about leaving a 1/4 cup measure in my oat flour, but it'll work. So I need 1 1/4 cups of oat flour. So we'll just do 5 of these scoops. I had a moment there where I thought I lost count. So we've got our oat flour in there. We need a teaspoon of baking powder. We need a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda. We need a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Then we just need to mix these together. My baking powder was a little clumpy. I should have broken that up before I put it in the bowl, but it'll be fine. So now that we've got our dry ingredients mixed up, now we need to do our wet ingredients. I'm just gonna mix them in the measuring cup that I melted my butter in. So I need a 1/4 cup of almond milk. I'm gonna flip that butter off for now. 1/4 cup of almond milk. The melted butter makes it a little bit hard to see the measurements on there, so I am actually going to pull out something to measure separately in. We're going to do 1/3 cup of apple juice. We need 1/4 cup of applesauce. And then the last thing we need is some vanilla. We are going to add about a teaspoon. Vanilla is one of those ingredients I'm happy to have a little bit of extra. And I forgot, on our dry ingredients, I wanted to add some spices and seasonings as well. The recipe that I'm starting with and adapting from is for a pineapple upside down cake. So I added a teaspoon of cinnamon there. And so it doesn't have these seasonings in it. But if you're going to have a fall themed apple cake, it only seems appropriate to have some fall spices in there too. So I'm going to add about a 1/4 teaspoon of ginger and a pinch of clove. Clove is one of those flavors I do genuinely like just a little bit, but you get too much and it's overpowering. So not too much. I'll mix that in all good. We've got our wet and our dry ingredients mixed up, and so now we can go back to our creamed butter over there. We need to add 2 eggs to that, one at a time, until they're incorporated, and then we'll start mixing in the wet and dry ingredients. Our butter is nice and creamed, so I'm gonna add our eggs in one at a time and get them nice and incorporated. So now we just want to add half of our flour mixture in here. And get that mixed in. If you hear noise in the background, my mom's making her morning coffee in the background. Scrape our bowl down and get that mixed in. So now we're going to add half of our liquid. I'm going to give our bowl another scrape here. Add the rest of our flour. And finally, the rest of our liquid. Now we just need to pour our batter over our apples. You can tell the season's changing here. Today is the first significantly cooler day we've really had. It's only supposed to get up to 69 today. And I can tell in the house because the butter in the bottom of this pan solidified. It's been months since I've experienced that. Now we just need to put our cake in the oven. It's going to bake at 350 degrees for about 30 minutes, but we'll test it, with a knife and make sure it's fully cooked. But so I'm going to get this in the oven and we'll come back when I pull it out. Our cake should be done or close to done. I did want to tell you guys, in the recipe that I'm using as my inspiration, they had you put foil on and cook it for an extra 15 minutes, and I forgot that. So I just need to grab a knife and give this a test. Oh yeah, that comes out perfectly clean. So it's ready to come out of the oven. So our cake needs to cool for about 30 minutes and then we can flip it out. It's always a little bit scary when you flip an upside down cake, but we're gonna do that together. So I'll meet you back here in 30 minutes. Okay, you guys, so it has been half an hour. The cake has cooled. Just gonna run a knife along here. And then we're gonna try and invert it onto this cake pan. So let's see how it goes. Okay, so here we go. I'm a little bit nervous, but ooh, let's pull this off. It's so pretty. You guys, I'm so happy with how this turned out. It's beautiful. Now we just need to cut in and have a bite. It's so pretty, you guys. I'm happy I took the time to try and make the apples a pretty spiral. So we are going to cut into this and give it a try. I almost hate to do it with the pretty apple spiral on it, but it doesn't matter how pretty it is if it doesn't taste good, right? It looks nice. All right, give it a go. It's really good. It sort of reminds me a little bit of the apple bread I made, just a little bit more decadent. But it is denser because it's oat flour. That's to be expected. But it tastes delicious. And that addition of the cinnamon and ginger and clove just really gives it that lovely fall flavor. So I'm going to call this a win. If you're looking for a fall dessert and you need something made with oat flour, I'm really happy with how this turned out. So thanks for hanging out with me today while I canned apples and made this beautiful cake. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time. Bye.